Hello, people. I'm back. I took a little leave of absence for a few weeks now. I just am recovering from a fairly minor surgery that slowed me down for actually better part of 3 months. Actually, the things leading up to it slowed me down, and then having had the surgery slowed me down. So I'm beginning to get back up to speed. I went skiing a couple of days ago. Felt really nice to be out on the mountain again. After spending a lot of time in the house. The only upside to the slowing down thing was it gave me a lot more time to think and listen to things and kind of get in that headspace where I could really process a lot of the NDE information I've been intaking. And now I'm feeling a little better and want to share some of the insights. I'm kind of getting into a place where I've listened to quite a few NDE things, and now I'm trying to internalize and find more practical applications for what I've learned. So, the last little stream I did had to do with my personal takeaways from it, and it's very subjective in a sense of how am I applying this to my life and where I'm at in this journey. And I look at it as part of my spiritual journey, having grown up in a church type setting and spent most of my time with that kind of a headspace going on. Christianity, pretty much, dabbling in a few other things, and then listening to near death experience videos and reading about them has brought in a whole dimension uh, that's very freeing, very unlimited compared to being narrowly limited to church teachings and things. There was a lot of fear and a lot of encouragement, let's say, to not dabble in anything outside of the Bible or outside of those things. And I realized that's a very limiting box. So I've at one point just decided, damn the torpedoes. I want to know the actual truth and all of it. And I know there's been a lot of, so let's say, modification of teachings over many decades, centuries, thousands of years, and a lot of the world over time hasn't been restricted in terms of what they were able to study and learn from. Uh, and now I'm beginning to get that as well, seeing the direct feedback from people that have gone over to the other side and come back to me is a better gauge of what's really going on out there than being restricted to what people read and wrote down and modified and passed along through the telephone game over time. And various churches had motives to restrict and change and try to maintain control over things. So let me get away from that. I have kind of an interesting thought stream for today, and this involves motivation. And I've been personally going through a transformation of trying to get my own motives straightened out and realize how much, when I grew up, how much fear was involved in what we were taught and how God was presented versus what people that have had NDEs come back with. And what they have come back with is such a different, I mean, a lot of the teachings and doctrines may not even be the issue. It's more the spirit behind it. People come back from a near death experience and talk about being absolutely overwhelmed with the love, an indescribable love, a creative force that permeates the universe, that connects everything, that's very positive in terms of motivation. And I began to look at that and break it down in terms of, like, what have I been motivated by? What was I presented with? And in some cases, it's well-meaning people that just have been taught the same material and had it presented in a threatening or intimidating way, and sort of a you have to believe or else, you have to do this or else, you're born defective and now you've got to try to fix yourself, or you've got to make yourself believe in a God that you may not actually believe in. I think a lot of people, including myself, at different points were intimidated into agreeing to believe in something or accepting something as truth that we really didn't deep down believe or internalize. And whenever you go past that, you create this cognitive dissonance of saying, yeah, okay, I'll go along with that. But deep down, if you haven't really understood and accepted a belief for yourself and you're agreeing to it simply to pacify somebody else or so that you don't go to hell, it's really not pure. It's not a pure motive. And listening to people come back from NDEs and say they've they've met Jesus, they've met God, and again, in many cases, these people, it's almost like on the other side, the actual God, let's say, use the term, uh, has allowed these people to see and hear and experience things that make sense to them. So it's like God is flexible enough to take an atheist or a Hindu or a Christian or an agnostic and accept them with love. And then these people experience the overwhelming love. And that's really the transformative power. The particular doctrines that they believed in or didn't, the church they went to or didn't, isn't the issue. People come back and say it has nothing to do with what they were ever taught. And I am far more open to accepting that for the simple reason that everybody is included. Nobody is shut out. Doesn't matter what particular presentation of a religion you heard or didn't hear, or even if you grew up in a cult or grew up on an island somewhere where you never heard anything about God. I mean, it actually is so obvious in the way you look around at creation and see the interaction of everything that's out there. And the NDE experiences basically report that we're all one, we're all connected, and all that good stuff. So let me jump into what I wanted to present. And it's very simply this, is that many people have suffered trauma and damage. And on this earth, it's almost like we came here to learn things. And I'll summarize what the NDE people say just so the context is clear. So people come back and basically say that they're coming from home, a very secure, loving place, and they basically agree and contract to come to Earth to learn. And it's a tough learning experience because here we're separated. Uh, Being connected is a huge part of ultimately what makes life good and what on the other side is important. So being connected, communicating, loving one another, being patient and long suffering, all these things, the security, the love, the peace that's on the other side is so amazing that people don't really want to come back here very often when they've had a near death experience, because it's so beautiful over there and none of the negatives seem to be there. So coming back here is very difficult, and re-entering a damaged body in many cases is going to be painful. And a lot of the people will come back just so that they can finish out their life here and not abandon the people they left behind, which is all a good thing. Um, so when people come here, we come from a place that's loving and beautiful, and you know people care. There's a terrific amount of love and everything. And then here, I realize people are competing for resources. They're afraid. They're separated, and all the things that happen on this earth that uh, are damaging and difficult are a result of our trying to cope here without being connected to our source or our creator, whatever. And we're ignorant. We've forgotten everything. And that's a condition for coming to earth to learn, is you have to forget, kind of temporarily forget the past, so that you don't have that interfering with your ability to deal with this life and learn the lessons that are in it. So this is all very complicated and mind-blowing, but uh, this is what people report, so I'm not questioning it. Other than I want to know more. I mean, it's quite bizarre, but it all makes sense in the large context of, in most cases, people attest to the idea that we have multiple lives and that we're on a steady learning process. There is no death. When we come back here, we're here to learn, and we frequently associate with the same group of people that we sort of travel through I want to say time. On the other side, there is no time. It's all sort of present moment. Here we go through chronological time. That's how we sort of measure what goes on. Um, so anyway, the motivational part of it that I've been alluding to, I'll look at my notes for a minute just so I can stay on track. Because I was going back to first principles. Like, we all suffer occasionally from depression or guilt, anger, shame, or any of these kind of things that are endemic to being on this planet, living life on this earth. But I began to realize one of the biggest breakthroughs for me was simply the idea that the ultimate motive is love. And then even in the Bible, I know the Bible pretty well from past experience, but Paul would say, let everything be done in love. And the love chapter in 1 Corinthians 13 describes love. And that's really worth a read, even if you just pull it up on a computer to read that, because God's love and the love Paul describes is perfect and all-inclusive, unconditional, long-suffering, patient, kind, enduring, And God doesn't want anyone to perish. I mean, we're all connected, so uh, we have free choice here. But the idea being that real love, and I have used this, and my wife and I have kind of used this with our kids, and I believe it's really bearing fruit, is the idea that real love is patient and encouraging, and rather than yelling at people and uh, coming down on them about everything they might do wrong or trying to discourage mistakes or failures, is love, the right kind of love, the kind of love that brings the best out of people, is encouraging, long suffering, non judgmental, allows for mistakes to be made, forgiving, and in such a way that a person feels secure and like, yeah, they can go ahead and give it a best shot, make an effort, learn. It's not all about perfection. It doesn't have to be an A+ every time. It's like, get out there, learn what you can, apply yourself. And the best feedback very often just comes through experience and trying things. So it's like Edison with the light bulb. I mean, he learned 1,000 ways it didn't work, but that each one got him closer to getting to the point where something did work. And persistence is such a hugely important part of success. Persistence past all kinds of obstacles, failures, and disappointments, and setbacks. You come out on top when you just keep going. You get back up. You bring in more information each time you fail, and then eventually you have enough so that you come up with a successful method if your goal is realistic or if success is possible. But if you persist long enough, you're going to learn what you need to learn to get a thing right, or if maybe sometimes find out that it just isn't going to work. But that's how you grow in life. It's more about the journey than the arrival. I think Robert Louis Stevenson said, to travel hopefully is better than to arrive. And that's where the growth and the learning is. It's in the traveling. So, and even now in this is a journey. We're trying to spiritually attain a better place and grow and learn. So to me, the the big thing for me was identifying patterns and saying, wow, in the past when you're a kid, you go through disappointments. I went through some rough stuff as a kid, and I had an older brother that was mentally ill, and he got beaten up and abused and bullied all the time, and it put fear on me. The world seemed like a dark, painful, ugly place because of that, and it stunted my social growth because the world seemed hostile. And now looking back, I'm like, wow, many years later, my wife and I got in a cult before we met. We actually met in a cult, and then we got out later. And even what happens is if you have a negative view of the world, it's like putting on dark, scratched up glasses. Everything it looks dark and ugly and bad. You tend to almost see the worst in everything and the worst in people. And then it clouds your thinking. You don't see the good. And having gone through all of that and reaching the age I'm at now, which is 65, everything is now looking back over time and realizing how good most people really are and how beautiful the world is in terms of nature, and a lot of people, a lot of creation is just beautiful. And I mean, I love being outdoors, and nature is sort of my happy place. And it does produce that feeling of connectedness and appreciation and such. So, but anyway, the motivation factor is, if you're moving in love, you're going to be hopeful and uh, wanting to be patient and appreciative. I mean, I feel like love is a big heading of a category, sort of like underneath love comes gratitude, patience, long suffering, willing to help others, a whole spectrum of positives, and happiness, joy, peace, all these things sort of run together on the positive side of the scale. On the negative side, fear is sort of the opposite of love. Fear has got you feeling like threatened, like, you're afraid of punishment by an angry God, or you're afraid of running out of money, or having a misfortune, or having medical problems, or any number of things fall in the category. And those things bring you down. So in the near-death experience world, it seemed sort of weird and a little bit off to me for a while. People would talk about the vibes, and, oh, you got to up your vibe, and there's these frequencies, and like that sounds sort of like a backdoor into spirituality where you're kind of cheating. You're just trying to work the system. And I'm like, I don't like to game the system. I want to know. I want the motivation to be pure, if it's possible, to actually want to do what's right, because it seems like a value that we want to hang on to. We want to do what's right, and it helps people. And now this all starts to fall into place, because the way it's described as the high vibe, high frequency life involves peace and love and joy, and, all the good stuff. And the negative spectrum of depression and despair and misery, all is low vibe. It's very bad. And I'm like, okay, how do I work with this to create, to improve life itself? And it began to come together as the whole idea of operating in positive motivation isn't just like positivity, like toxic positivity, always just talking everything up beyond what it is. It's more like, no, no, you can change your own thought patterns. So, excuse me. So, the thought patterns we have, if you find yourself falling into negative thought loops, and I've found myself in that too, is you can uh, anticipate. Like one of my patterns I discovered was simply when you are afraid of a situation that's coming up that might be stressful or difficult or painful, like for example, this medical thing, there's a tendency almost to protect yourself by preparing for the worst. And you can start cycling these scenarios in your head like, wow, what's the worst thing that can happen? Well, okay, if I get used to the idea that this is just going to eventuate in misery and pain and death, and if I can somehow stuff that down and move on beyond it, then I'm ready in case that happens. But the dark thing about it is, that has a strange tendency to want to manifest. And that's another NDE kind of takeaway, is the idea that our thoughts are things and they actually have power. On the other side, they're very powerful, and they can manifest immediately in terms of travel and learning and all these things. Here, everything is kind of slowed down. It takes time to process things and do things, but our thoughts actually can manifest in events. And if we kind of cycle the same thought loops over and over, they tend to build into something where we're actually looking for and anticipating something happening. If it's a good thing and we're thinking positively, then that's what we're going to more likely to manifest. And if we're preparing for the worst by thinking through in a mental state of fear how we're going to handle something bad, then that can tend to want to manifest that thing. And even like if you get angry with a person over something and you recycle that in your head enough, you're going to begin to hate them or fear them or have a negative reaction next time you see them based on the fact you've been replaying something in your head that may or may not have even happened. On the other hand, if you spin that around and do a positive take on it and start thinking, deliberately thinking through positive scenarios and how you can do your best to ensure that things do well, then that helps you to move up in the scheme of things. So this whole vibe idea has validity in the sense of um, our thoughts actually tend toward, they attract. There's a law of attraction they talk about. Excuse me. The law of attraction is sort of the same idea. Whatever we think about, we're going to bring in and attract to us. So if you think in terms of beauty or wealth or whatever, I mean, if your thoughts are in those directions, those are the things you're more likely to see and notice and see opportunities for. And if you're looking down, literally, physically, if you're looking down at the ground, you're missing out on the sky and the birds flying overhead and, the moon at night and, beautiful things. You can miss that by looking down, only seeing what's, the dirt on the ground beneath your feet. So you have some control. So another pattern, and this was interesting. I had a conversation with my son a while back, and I've noticed a lot of people fall into this, is the old school motive where you feel like there's punishment. Like, yeah, if you do good, you get rewarded. If you do badly, you get punished, yelled at, criticized, condemned, told you're stupid. And then you learn to beat yourself up. And, I used to do it all the time. I believed in it almost like a motive. Like, if you want to do better at something and you don't do super well, if you beat yourself up enough, you'll force yourself to do better. So it almost became negative motivation, like programmed in, failing at something and then berating yourself, beating yourself up. And ultimately that translates into not loving yourself. And another big principle is simply, if you don't love yourself and you're not comfortable, at peace and happy with yourself the way you are, then you're carrying that around with you. And then a lot of people fall into that thing of looking for somebody else to love them or rescue them or what have you. And it puts terrible burdens in relationships. Like when you look for somebody else to fix you or make you happy. Like the whole idea, if somebody tells you they love you and they are basically demanding that you make them happy, they don't love you. They need you. They want you. They want to squeeze something out of you. They want to draw blood from you, which maybe they don't even know they're doing it. It may not be malicious in motivation, but the whole idea is if you're not personally internally happy, and no matter what you're doing, then you're not happy, and it's not fair to lay that burden on anyone else. So the idea is to say, well, why are you not happy? And here we come to the whole love realization. And I'm going to spin off into a slight tangent here, but I think it's a kind of a cool one. Is the idea, I think when we were on the other side before we came here, we were bathed in love and acceptance and non-judgmental, uh, unconditional love, support, provision. Everything on the other side is light and energy. So we don't have these material issues of lack of food or lack of, a lot of things, money and whatever. We come here, it's a very insecure place to be. So we're more inclined to fall into fear because we're not used to being here. We've come from a place where there was a great deal of security and assurance. And even like raising kids, the idea is for kids to grow up feeling secure and confident and comfortable is gigantically important. Like, I look back and like our kids is like, if you're in poverty and always groveling and scraping and don't have resources and you're in fear, you transfer that to your kids. So it's not like excessive wealth is a good thing. It's not. It has its own issues. But the idea of bringing up kids where it's peaceful and secure, they're accepted, will promote growth. That's kind of an expression of love. Whereas on this earth, there's a lot of fear motivating factors. I mean, you look around at the world today and with the wars and disasters and, natural disasters, crime, abuse. I mean, there's just so many things that we have to endure here that are terrible. Many people, I don't know how they endure what they go through. I mean, even for me, going through a medical situation, I had a victory over it in the sense that I learned to attack it with what I've learned from the NDE world. And it was really a positive experience in the sense that I began to appreciate every person that was in that chain of events that helped me go from having something that was potentially life threatening and painful and terrible to these people working together to help me recover and do better and get over this. And there's people in every specialty of medicine and different things. I'm like, it is a miraculous world when you have people that can help you in every area. There's always experts out there. There's always people that, for whatever weird reason, devoted their life to working on a certain part of the human body. And you're like, man, I'd be dead if it weren't for your help. So, I mean, I went through it with gratitude, and I resisted the temptation to catastrophize in my mind as to what could go wrong and what might happen. And as a result, I was able to really appreciate every person along the way. The food was good, the people were nice, even the guy who walked in, cleaned the floor. I mean, people are taking care of you. And I'm like, yeah, this is not a bad world. We've got it pretty good here. Would that the whole world operated like this. Would that war and all these terrible things would be put away forever. And as we become enlightened, and I believe the whole NDE thing is actually a branch of enlightenment that's now available through YouTube and everything. Many people are becoming enlightened, and the more that do, and the more that learn to want to be motivated positively to help each other, the better the world that is. That we're manifesting a better world. I think it's really starting to happen. And when you personally take this on and begin to try to say, I mean, I'll use the term up your vibe because now it makes sense to me why, is examine your own patterns, examine the patterns in your life. What's motivating you? I mean, we all do have, those seasonal things that happen, like even now, I'll get in a spring funk when, it's winter's on the way out, spring isn't really here, it's mud season up in Vermont. And it can put you sort of in a pit. And then the time change. We just had the daylight savings switch over, and now there's sort of an adjustment to that. Like all of a sudden, it seems like the clock's way ahead of where it ought to be. And then you get up in the morning, you feel a little bit funky. It's hard to wake up. So there's ways out of that too. I'll throw this in there as, excuse me. So thought patterns are very important, but there's also a physical side to this in as much as there are things that we can do to up our vibe level or up our happiness level. And some of them are very simple because the way the body works, we're living in this body and it's got its science associated with a body. So anything that can make us feel better can be helpful. For me, nature, being outdoors, fresh air, exercise are all positives. And for me, like, hiking up on a mountain and just seeing the beauty of nature. I love photography because I just appreciate the beauty of nature. So that I find that motivating. It's fun, especially now. When I was a kid, film cameras, you might take 12 or 24 pictures and have to pay and wait to get them developed. And if they were crappy, there's nothing you can do about it. Now you can whip out a phone and take beautiful pictures, and it doesn't cost anything, and keep the ones you like, delete the ones you don't. That doesn't cost anything, doesn't take any time. So it's magic. It's a cool form of magic, and then you can share those things. So, uh, so there's a lot of things, positive, constructive things, hobbies, crafts, socializing with friends and family, even pets are very therapeutic. So many people love that. We have pets. We have a couple dogs. We love them, and they're just so much fun to play with and hang around with, and they're always loving. They come around. They're unconditional love. They just love you all the time, no matter what, and they're just positive. They give you good energy. So, and having somebody to love and take care of, whether it's a person or an animal, it's a very positive thing. So we enjoy our critters for those reasons. We just like to have them around. They're so cute. They put you in a good mood. It's hard to be in a bad mood when you're petting a appreciative little tail wagging dog. It's just they're so cute. Or cats or whatever kinds of critters you have. Snakes, whatever works for you. Um, so anyway, I think I'll conclude this shortly if I run out of thoughts on these subjects. But on the positive side, exercise, going to the gym, going out for a walk, just walks are very therapeutic. Sitting around is kind of tough on the body, and it's really probably one of the worst things you can do is a total lack of activity. But I know some people can't help that. If you're trapped in a wheelchair or very physically limited, that's not going to be something you can do. But if you can, you go out for a walk. Even a 1-2 mile walk on a sunny day is just a very therapeutic thing. Going to the gym, doing a craft project, creating something. Find something that you're passionate about that you enjoy and make time for it. Music. Music's very uplifting and therapeutic. And I'm fortunate. I tried to become a guitar player. I never got very good. But then my son, when he reached a certain age, picked up the guitar, and within a few months, he was far better than I ever could be. And now has a band. He and his brother are in a band. Their older sister can sing like amazingly. They all have these gifts that somehow skip me. And my wife and I, we dabble. We like karaoke, but these kids really have talent now. They're actually making money singing and playing out. It's so pleasant and uplifting. So look for something you're passionate about to pursue. Look for things that make you happy. Help people, volunteer, get out there and do things that bring you up. Because the whole idea, if your motive, I'll end on this note. For me, learning that love and the positive motives, this is really the therapy that brings you up to a higher, happier place. And I've noticed that it's happening now. Part of my journey is to keep learning and growing spiritually. There's people way ahead of me in this journey that have more to say than I do, but this is sort of the state of the art of where I'm at, is just seeing how powerful motivation is, and how if you begin to examine your thoughts, and if you fall into a mental or emotional pit, try to analyze why you fell into it, what kind of thought patterns might have led to it, what kind of thought patterns can be changed out and replaced with better ones. See if love and positive motivation is behind what you're doing and why, and then see if you've got some dark negatives, thought loops that get going in your head. You can shut those down and replace them with better ones, or you can get out and find something to do that brings you up into a higher state. But to me, it's all about trajectory. I'm always using the word trajectory to people. And one example I like to give is simply this: is like, if you were down in the most miserable, depressing, nasty, muddy pit and trapped there for a while, and it was just horrible, and you're hungry and starving, but somebody comes by and tells you, you know what, we're going to rescue you. We just found out you're in this pit. We're going to pull you out of here, clean you up, and get you all cleaned up, and go to a restaurant and have a good dinner, and we're going to give you $1 million so you can reset your life and get, all of a sudden you're on an upward trajectory. You can be in the most miserable place in life, but if you have hope and you're starting to climb up out of it, you can be in the lowest place and be very happy knowing that life's going to get better for you. So it's not where you are, it's what your motivation and your trajectory is. If you're on an upward, hopeful trajectory, you're going to be happy. It's going to produce happiness. Just the fact you have hope, that's a sub part of love, I think, is just the idea. You have hope, faith, and love. Paul said those are the three, the love of being the best one of the three. But to me, is hope and faith. Hope is the idea you believe things are going to get better. Faith is sort of the same idea. And when you're moving in love, all of a sudden you're powered up with a positive motivation to do the best you can. On the other hand, you can be in the highest place, and if you are looking off the top of a beautiful mountain, but the next day you're going to get tried for some crime you committed, or you're going to run out of money, or a business you started is failing, and you're going to go have to face the music. And in other words, if you've got something really bad ahead of you, or you're just given a very bad medical diagnosis or something, you'll crash and burn. You can be in the best, most luxurious place one day, and all of a sudden, if your trajectory is downward, you're going to become miserable and unhappy. So always look to make your trajectory upward. What's going to make things better if possible? Sometimes you got to just tough out a rough experience, and you have to steel yourself for that, because that's part of the learning that we're going through here. But if you can try to stay on an upward trajectory and examine anything in your life that's subpar, and see how you can arrange and apply yourself to make it better, you'll be in a better state. So anyway, I'm going to end here with that, and good getting back in front of you and sharing a little bit. It just feels really good to be back on track, and hopefully I'll be putting up some videos of outdoor things now that spring is coming. Anyway, have a good day, and we'll talk to you again soon. And I will end the recording. It's just always a nuisance because it keeps going for an extra minute. Oops. And you have to do it twice.